Did you know that it's anti-communism week? Well, the White House and Trump especially have taken the time to write a whole statement about this and to remind us that for more than a century, communism has brought nothing but ruin. Communism has destroyed or taken the lives of hundreds of millions of people. It has destroyed prosperity, suppressed democracy, and communism is nothing but another word for servitude. Oh, wait, sorry, hold on. I think that's actually the capitalist system. When you read what this statement shows, all I can think is you are describing perfectly what capitalism has done for the last couple of hundred years.
Yeah, that sounds about right
Yeah.
to me. And the more that they attack communism, especially in the form of Zohran Mamdani
Yes.
at the moment, the more pressure they put on this point, I feel like the more it's backfiring because it shows how terrified they are that people are questioning their economic system.
Yeah.
They don't believe these myths that they're taught at school.
Yeah, it's kind of laughable, but in the statement they've put out, what's interesting is they say, well, today they're changing their language, the
Yes.
communists, and they mask what they're truly about by using terms such as social justice and democratic socialist, which is obviously an attack against Mamdani and the DSA. And I think it's really interesting. We have produced material on our international website, Marxist.com, but also you should look at the Communists of America, the RCA, who've produced an excellent article on what Mamdani's win really means. But the point is this: I don't think that Trump and the ruling class really believe that Mamdani is a communist. What their attacks represent is the fact that they're really terrified at the general mood that is brewing in society. As you say, the fact that people don't believe in these myths so much as they might have done in the past. Or when they say, yeah, this guy, he's a communist, a lot of people are like, so? It isn't the dirty word that it used to be.
Yes.
That terrifies them. And I think that's what lies behind a lot of this anti-communist propaganda, lies and smears that we're seeing.
No, of
at the
course.
moment.
And a lot of representatives of the American ruling class blame this on the fact that people nowadays, the young generation, can't remember the Cold War.
They don't know.
They don't know, and so they're kind of harking back to the days of McCarthyism,
Yes.
right? Of this red terror, this kind of paranoia that your neighbor might be a communist, and might be a subversive, and that threatens godless communism threatens the American way of life and this kind of thing.
These things like how to spot a communist.
Yeah,
or,
yeah.
I don't know.
Guides to that, and obviously, communist workers being blacklisted as well. This did lead to a genuine fear for a whole generation of questioning American dominance, right? Being sympathetic towards the Soviet Union. But the thing that makes me laugh about all of this is it's clearly coming from a place of weakness on the part of Trump, because for the last 30 years, we've spoken about the end of history and the peace that was supposed to be brought. They have declared again and again and again that communism is dead. Marx is finished. But the question we have to ask is, if communism died in 1991, why do you feel the need to pronounce it dead again and again and again? Clearly what you're saying is that you wish the ideas of communism would die, right? And you wish it wasn't becoming more of a reference point for young people. Trump has actually continued what he began in his first term. I remember in 2018, the White House produced a document, an official document of about 100 pages talking about the dangers of socialism and communism.
That's not a confident system.
No,
Yeah.
and it's certainly not a confident representative. But in America, and as is the case in Britain, there's so much mythology surrounding what capitalism is about, right? And I feel like in America, it's often dressed up in the language of liberty and
Freedom.
Yeah, freedom. That's the big one. And so maybe we could start with some of the myths of capitalism.
Yeah.
Of the things that you find in White House official documents and
Yes.
on Republican senators' Twitter pages as well.
Yeah, they're atting me, which is this is extraordinary. But I think we should start with the question of freedom, because we've been talking about America, and America as, or the ruling class laud this idea that it's the land of the free.
Yes.
And you go to America for freedom and prosperity. But yeah, does capitalism actually give you freedom?
Mm. Yeah. Let's start there. I think what apologists for capitalism will say is you are free to choose what you do with your life. What you make of your life is up to you, basically. And you didn't have that in other economic systems, right? You could point to slave society and say, well, the slaves were bound to their master. You could point to feudal society and talk about the serfs and the peasants and their conditions tied to the land. But under capitalism, there is this ostensible freedom there, right? You can choose your employer. And often the right wing say, well, if you don't like your work, just pick another job.
Yeah.
But actually, what this misunderstands is the fact that people are free from all of the wealth that exists in society. That's the condition of working class people, right? You are free to sell your capacity to work to a capitalist. And if you don't, what do you face? You face destitution. You face ruin, basically. So that's the freedom that safeguards the interests and the profits of the bosses. And I think also one thing that I find very humorous when the right wing attack communists is they talk about freedom as this kind of beautiful abstract ideal that everyone is striving towards. But actually, as a working class person in the workplace, it's the boss that is the most tyrannical bastard of all, right?
Yeah.
We've spoken about this in previous weeks, how AI and automation are not used for the common good. In fact, it's for surveillance of working class people. Working class people fear innovations and technological breakthroughs because they fear they're going to be out of a job. Yeah. So this is there is no real freedom to plan, to control your life under capitalism. And I think it's something that a lot of young people feel as well, right? Like when you hear about people's rota systems, you're trying to make plans with your friends, right? They're like, oh, I don't know until Sunday night what my next week is going to look like. That kind of flexibility benefits one person, and it's your boss. It's not you as a worker, right?
And I think that flows really well into the other kind of really prominent myth around communism and around capitalism, which is to do with democracy, essentially. People might say, yeah, well, capitalism, there might be some people say, okay, well, capitalism isn't always going to be perfect, but that's because it's a democracy. And you have to accompany everyone and their views and their thoughts with this idea that everyone has a say over what is happening in their lives and that everyone has a choice. But as you've just described, democracy under capitalism, there are no free choices that are being made when you are coerced by your economic conditions, and especially for the working class, to choose a job on certain circumstances where, as you say, the boss sets the agenda, the working week, the hours that you might work, the wage that you get. It's not a free choice that you're choosing. If you don't do that, you're going to starve or you're going to be homeless. But more importantly, I want to talk about the idea of elections and political parties. If you take, for example, the last election we had in Britain, what was the choice between the Tories and Labour, which was just austerity or austerity?
Genocide or genocide.
Genocide or genocide, war or war. And I think that this is something that actually Lenin explained really well in The State and Revolution. He talks about how democracy under capitalism is just democracy for the rich. It's just democracy for the ruling class. They are the only ones who have a say over how society is run. The rest of us, every couple of years, might have an election where you can pick between Tweedledum and Tweedledee, and maybe some arbitrary secondary, aspect of your life is going to change. But the more that capitalism has gone into crisis, I would say the whole edifice of bourgeois society, the lie that it's a democracy, has been exposed for so many people. Yeah. And also through the Palestine movement, particularly over questions of freedom of speech. Yes. What are you allowed to say in this so-called democracy? You're not allowed to call for an end to the genocide because you'll be called an anti-Semite. You could be fired from your job. The whole lie that capitalism is this free society in which people can fight for what they believe in and have a job and change things. That is just not the reality that people see and people experience.
Yes, yeah. And it's no surprise then that people doubt that electoral politics can really bring any change.
Yeah.
In so many countries, especially in the West at the moment, we see that abstention wins elections.
Voter
right?
turnout is so low. Yeah.
Because I think for a lot of people, I mean, when the option is war or genocide, austerity or austerity, it's really difficult to feel engaged with electoral politics.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean that people are apolitical.
Yeah, there's a big difference.
A very big difference. You can have you can feel rage against the system, but so many times when we're selling the newspaper, as soon as you say to people that we're not like other parties, with the Revolutionary Communist Party, we're revolutionaries. We wanna get rid of the warmongers in Westminster. People are like, hey, actually, I want to talk to you about that.
Yes.
Which shows, I think, that the disconnect between those at the top that basically administer society in the favor of the rich, the billionaires, the bankers, and people that, yes, might not feel like politics has anything to do with them, but actually they have some real strong political opinions when you get talking to them about their conditions of life, right?
Yeah. Actually, at the weekend, I was at a screening for Independent Candidate, which is a documentary that was made about our election run last year. And one of the questions I was asked was, what other election campaign inspired you, when you guys were making this campaign? And I said, to be honest, we weren't looking at other election campaigns as inspiration because we weren't running a traditional political campaign.
Yes.
And I think that's actually what enthused people. People did not want to get involved in the kind of mind-numbing door knocking or ticking, when you kind of canvassed, as some of us did in the past, maybe for Jeremy Corbyn and the Labour Party, you're just sent to doors and told to check that person's voting Labour, not actually have a political discussion. So our campaign was a revolutionary campaign, and it was all about rejecting what people traditionally tell you about politics. And I think that's what made it actually inspiring and exciting.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. It was exciting and inspiring.
Thank you so much.
I think something that underpins the attacks from the right wing against socialists is this idea that socialism or communism is unnatural.
Yeah.
And I mean, what's the motto of Wall Street? Greed is good, right? That's the prominent idea. And that's something, of course, that Trump himself believes. And it's not just Trump, it's the people around him. It's the people at the top of society, right? That is their ethos. And I feel like this was kind of the thread when they wrote this document of, well, nice idea, but actually maybe people are just being misguided. Here are the horrors, here are the crimes.
Yes.
But most importantly, it could never possibly work because it's against our nature. Yeah. And our nature, human nature, is defined in a very narrow, egotistical way. To be a human is to be self-interested. That must mean, this is what these people say, that you're only out for number one, right? And that you only really care about your grind. You can succeed at the cost of other people, this kind of stuff. This is a powerful ideological tool, I would say, that the capitalists use. But it's so historically illiterate. And what I mean by that is it's taking the prejudices and ideas of today's society and smearing them onto the whole of human history. Yeah. And as Marxists, I think a very powerful part of being a communist is understanding that that's not the case. Yeah. Like Marx had this wonderful phrase that history is nothing but the transformation of human nature. What did he mean by that? He means that it's really the conditions of life, it's the way in which the economy is set up, society is organized, that determine our ideas about the world. And so obviously, when you live in a society where profit is put first, where greed is encouraged and rewarded, of course, that's going to be brought out in people, right? That's not to say that this is natural in our nature. In fact, for the vast majority of our species' existence, we have not organized society in this way. The idea of even permanent settlements and working 9-to-5s and everything else that goes along with that, with what capitalism requires, would be totally alien to people thousands of years ago, right? So when you put it like that, I think it shows actually that at root, it's the economic system that produces these ideas, the exploitation that exists, and I think what's very dangerous from the point of view of the bourgeois is more and more people are questioning whether or not this is actually the way that they want to relate to other people,
Yes.
relate to society,
Yeah.
especially at a time where there is the basis for a much higher form of society based on all of the innovations, the technological developments that capitalism has brought. How is it the case in 2025 that, it feels like we're in a rat race, that people are frightened of AI and technology?
Yeah.
I think people are questioning that.
People are questioning that. And that's why the ruling class is terrified. Actually, I saw a TikTok this morning, maybe we'll play it, it was actually an AI video, but it was commenting on this feeling that young people have. And it starts with a young person saying, I've just graduated. And then she turns to the TV and the TV host is saying, the economy and the job situation has never been worse. And then it's her trying to buy a house and then being told, you cannot afford this because of you. And it just marks out all of these supposed milestones that people are supposed to go through, and the fact that young people cannot achieve these milestones. And I think that actually it leads to, it's not always fully conscious and developed in people's heads, but just this low-lying questioning constantly of the system that we exist in, over things like democracy, freedom, and greed, human nature. What is society? What is society all about? And the problem for the ruling class is that people are questioning this more because the society around them isn't giving them the guarantees that it might have been able to in the past. And that's very significant. And I think that is the mood that we meet a lot on campuses and on the streets with how people become interested in Marxism in the first place.
Yeah.
I think it'd be useful for us to describe a bit also ourselves what brought us into that journey, because I think something that we often find is people think they're the only one who feels that way or thinks that way. But what we're trying to show people through this podcast, through our materials, that there's a whole generation of people who are questioning and are being politicized and radicalized, basically.
The propaganda's not working.
It's not working. and we want to accelerate that process a little bit and say, actually, hi, there's a whole group of us out there who feel the same.
Yes.
And I know for me, when I first found this organization, it transformed my life. But I was trying to reflect, before this podcast about what brought me towards the ideas of Marxism, towards the ideas of communism. And I think that it's probably not unique in comparison to a lot of other people. I think that when I was a teenager and on Tumblr, there was a lot of silly stuff, Doctor Who, whatever. But there was also a lot of politics that kind of was injected into stuff I was seeing online. And I really remember, I think one of the events that really politicized me was the first wave of Black Lives Matter, when it erupted in the US. I really remember in particular the killing of Eric Garner, because that video went viral all over the internet. For people who don't know, Eric Garner was a Black man who was killed by a police officer who kind of tried to restrain him and put him in a kind of a headlock, yeah. And he puts him in such a tight headlock with his arm like wrapped around his neck that he basically suffocates him to death. And the video went viral and he kind of just falls to the floor, and it sparked absolute outrage. And I remember watching that video and just, it's not a natural thing to watch someone die, right? In such a horrific way. And it impacted so many people and raised so many questions about the police. And it was this question of power. How can someone on behalf of the state just kill someone so openly on the street, and then it was defended and justified? Yes. And that sparked, huge Black Lives Matter protests. And I remember this poem that I saw online at the time as well, that I can't remember how it goes, but it references the fact that Eric Garner had worked in a park, I think. And it was just a really beautiful poem about how the trees and the plants that he would have helped plant, produce oxygen that helped people breathe. And because the whole point was that as Eric Garner died, he was repeatedly saying, I can't breathe, and then the police officer just doesn't do anything. This had a massive impact on me. And I remember crying and thinking, how can this be the world? And I remember actually my dad coming to me and saying, I understand why you're feeling this way, but you can't absorb all the problems of the world because you won't cope. You've just got to think of small things you can do to change society. And then I thought, okay, maybe I'll be a lawyer. You go on these kind of journeys. But actually, I think that this made me think a lot about oppression. And so as it did for a whole generation of people, what is racism, police brutality? Where does it come from? And I don't think that's a very unique journey or a unique political radicalization process. I think a lot of people feel the same way today about Black Lives Matter, which has continued. Obviously, we had the George Floyd protest movement, but I think also the Palestine movement evokes the same feeling. It's not natural to see people die, and we are seeing that again through the genocide that's continued to unfold in Gaza. But this makes people question, why is this being justified through the mainstream media, through politicians, or through right-wing commentators online, which feeds this kind of grotesque algorithm that people are witnessing every single day? All of that, led me to want to understand racism, all of these kind of things. And then when I went to university, I met people trying to offer systemic explanations for that.
Yes. Yeah.
But we can come on to that later. Maybe.
Yeah. I get asked this question a lot in London, like what radicalized you? And it's so difficult
to pinpoint.
Exactly.
It's a lot of different things.
It's so much. I feel like in 2025 we can almost reverse the question. What has made you think that this system works? That you will prosper under this system? Yeah. But for me, I feel like in my early teenage years, I could see very clearly that the people that worked the hardest in society were the ones that were least rewarded. And coming from a working class family from Yorkshire, I don't sound like that anymore. This is what 8 years in the South has done to my accent, as my mum always reminds me.
Sorry.
But I could see how little control working class families, my friends' families, my family, really had in determining what their lives would look like. The constant concerns about money, the constant concerns about making ends meet, the redundancies as well in work that followed 2008. And so that really shook me up. And my grandma, she was very left-wing, and she's very inspired by her dad, who went into the trenches in the First World War, came back and said, if I was any more red, I'd be a Bolshevik. So
that's where you get it from.
So she says that I'm her dad incarnate, and I actually, am a working Bolshevik now.
There you go. That's pretty good.
It was seeing just kind of the decay of a town, the closing down of factories, this sort of thing. But also, I feel like the Arab Spring massively radicalized me as well. I was 12 when the Arab Spring began, and I remember my dad bringing back newspapers, and he'd be talking about what was happening in Egypt. He was saying, when will this happen in Algeria? I was so excited, and I remember kind of following it with my dad all the way along to the Syrian civil war. And I think we spoke about this in another podcast, but seeing the role that Western imperialism played in Syria was huge for me, because I thought, how can these people that come to on television programs with their polished words and their suits and this kind of slick liberal look that they go for, these are barbarians. These people are absolutely destroying countries. And that got me.
And then they call others terrorists.
Others terrorists. Yeah, that was a very big thing for me. And I set up a communist club at my school.
Did you?
Yeah. It started actually as a Jeremy Corbyn fan club in 2016 in my sixth form with my best friend. And then...
What did you do?
We just argued. We were trying to figure things out. He was reading a lot of Chomsky at the time. I was trying to take on Marx. I couldn't understand any Marx at the time. But yeah, there was this moment where I was really trying to explain things, and meeting the communists on campus when I got to university, I sought out the Marxist Society, and finding these people that could actually put words to the feelings I'd felt for so many years was so powerful.
Yeah, I think the way you've just described that, putting words to the feeling, is what is so important, because a lot of people today have that gut feeling already. And that comes from that kind of anger. It's disgust and it's anger. But then there's a bit beyond that, which is like wanting to know and understand, why is this happening? And I had the exact same experience. I remember going to university, 18, thinking, I'm going to change the world. Maybe I'll join the UN. And I went to the Freshers' Fair, and I saw the Labour Society, and I signed up because Jeremy Corbyn, this was September 2015, a long time ago, and Jeremy Corbyn had just been elected the leader of the Labour Party, and so I joined Labour. And then I saw the Marxist Society stall, which also had a picture of Jeremy Corbyn. I think it would have had "Defend Corbyn, Fight for Socialism" as a banner.
Yeah.
And so I went straight up to them and signed up, and they had a meeting in the first week on what is Marxism. And I went along to it. I remember it was a big meeting. I don't think I understood everything that I heard, but I just remember thinking, these guys really seem to know what they're talking about and seem quite confident. And I just wanted to know more. I wanted to keep going and optimistic. And that was kind of it. And that was how I met the comrades of the branch that I eventually joined. And so much of it was like, how can we get you into a reading group? How can we have discussions with you? How can we take this forward? Which, was the best thing I ever did, going to those meetings, and then eventually, properly, officially joining the organization. And it meant that I moved beyond just that kind of almost emotional response to the crisis of capitalism. And I think that's really important. It's also, I would say, moving beyond a moral response and trying to scientifically understand the world. That was really impressed upon me when I joined the organization. We have to scientifically understand what capitalism is. And I think that's the only way you can maintain yourself, 8 years later, basically. It's very easy to become burnt out as an activist on the left or whatever, involved in all these different movements, if your motivation or your energy is just this kind of moral outrage. We need actually a broader scientific analysis that allows you to go through the ebbs of movements as well.
Yes, yeah, for sure. And the way it was explained to me when I first joined is, you become a communist when you turn that anger into action. And when you have that framework of understanding why struggles take place, when you're able to understand how to act. Because I mean, I joined in 2018, and admittedly Britain was very sleepy in that year compared to British politics today. But still, like, there was so much chaos in the world, and trying to make sense of that is very difficult if you're kind of just being dragged around by, there's this movement that's popping up, and then there's this movement, and so on and so forth. And I feel like that's what kind of distinguishes our organization. We're a modest force then, we're a modest force now as well. But it's really underpinned by a sense of what the historic tasks are. And the only way for that not to feel overwhelming is by setting yourself, tasks like go along to a branch meeting to discuss politics. The first thing that was said to me was, joining this organization is about education. But education in Marxist theory, but education in how to act as a communist as well. What do communists do? How do communists go along to pickets? How do we raise demands on campus?
It's not just an identity.
Yes.
Or a Twitter profile.
Or a tote bag.
Or a tote bag.
Or a t-shirt.
But what a lovely t-shirt you have on, Cal.
I'll
it
say
looks
the
really
same
good.
to you.
Thank you so much. I think these will be available.
They'll be available at Revolution Festival for all of our fans.
If you're listening just with your ears and not your eyes, we have beautiful t-shirts on with the World on Fire logo.
Yes. I forgot what I was saying.
Communism's not a t-shirt or an identity.
Or a tote bag,
Or a
yes,
tote
I remember now. And that was a very powerful thing,
Yeah.
going along to protest and understanding what the job of communists are. And I would say, of course, a big part of that is building an organization that at a certain point will be able to play a decisive role
Yeah.
in politics, right? But on a microcosmic scale, on a university campus, it's about getting stuck in with the struggles that are taking place.
Yeah.
I remember I used to miss so many of my lectures for various reasons, but one of the reasons was because there were so many picket lines taking place on campus.
Yeah.
The year I joined, the UCU, the University Lecturers Union, was out on strike for 4 weeks straight. And I remember going along and thinking this was going to be the start of a revolution because it was my first experience.
Of course.
And when my academic supervisor was like, "Why aren't you going along to class?" I was just like, "Well, I'm actually learning more on the picket line."
There you go.
And yeah, I meant every word.
Yeah. No, you're right. And I remember, because I went to university, in SOAS, and there was a lot of strikes and a lot of activity around the cleaners who, in the University of London, these central universities are outsourced to private companies, and they have terrible conditions, often no sick leave and no leave holiday pay. It's very, very bad. And so there was a lot of activity around that. And yeah, we would discuss in branch something that was coming up, discuss the question of privatization, outsourced workers, particularly migrant workers and the conditions that they face, why that happens, and then, go along with other comrades to the picket lines and discuss with the workers, discuss how we could organize student staff solidarity, this type of activity, which is so important in training yourself as a communist, how we relate our ideas to the real life struggle that is taking place all around us. I think that's really important. And also huge demonstrations. Being at SOAS meant we were often the beginning of a lot of massive national demonstrations against the Tories at the time. And, I remember learning all the first kind of classic slogans against the Tories. There was always, people would throw in ones against the Lib Dems as well. Just why not? For fun, yeah. But this is the training ground, right? Because we make this point, when you join this organization, we want to train you in how to be a communist. And that is theory above all, but it's also taking that theory into the real world and analyzing the real world. And I think as an organization, we've grown a lot since then, not just quantitatively, but also qualitatively. Am I saying right?
Yeah. Qualitatively, yeah. Yeah, for sure. It's a different organization now. Than the one that we joined. Of course, in the fundamentals, it is not. It is exactly the same. And
we look a bit different.
We do look older.
We look a little bit older.
But I feel like one of the most exciting things that I've done in my adult life was partake in the "Are You a Communist" campaign.
Yes.
In the communist turn, and what ultimately led to us founding the Revolutionary Communist Party.
Absolutely.
2 years ago now?
Yes.
2023? Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. And what was the basis of that? The basis was an appraisal of a new political situation opening up. One where we'd often find that people that were drawn to socialism would associate it very much with failure, with failed left reformist politics, of Corbynism, of Sanders, Tsipras, the stuff we talked about in our episode on the left, and more
potentially Mamdani, depending on.
Yeah, and more often than not, what we would find is this kind of rage that no one was actually tapping into in society. There was lots of polls that came out indicating just how far this process had gone along. Like in Western capitalist countries, roughly a third of young people being open to communism.
Yeah.
Now, that wasn't understood to mean there is a third of people that are ready for revolution and know exactly what communism is and so on and so forth.
Working Bolsheviks.
And ready-made communists. It wasn't like that at all. And we didn't understand it as such. The way in which we understood that was there is this anger against the system and this total rejection of all politics as people have known it, right?
Yes.
Throughout their lives. And in such a situation, we need to match that energy.
Yeah.
We need to put ourselves out there a lot more as an organization. And that's exactly what we did.
Yes.
We were more bold, more audacious, putting ourselves out there, more in movements. I think when I joined the organization, there was this question of like, oh, well, we'll do something like that when we're a little bit bigger, whenever
Yes.
you'd raise an initiative. But we began to start asking the question, well, why can't we do that?
Yeah.
Why can't we put ourselves out there a little bit more?
Yes.
The mood exists in society. And of course, it was with that consideration that you ended up running in a general election.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, since launching the RCP, we have done so more than we could have predicted. The general election included. That was, a very unique circumstance that developed off the back of my kind of new profile, where I live, a whole bunch of different things, the Palestine movement, the encampments, which meant we were able to run this huge, phenomenal communist election campaign, a revolutionary campaign, which produced amazing things and showed us, just how much of a space there was for us to talk about revolutionary communist politics to a lot of people. And I think that then set the tone for a lot of our activity over the next couple of years. We've had huge interventions in massive national demonstrations over Palestine. We had a massive intervention at the anti-austerity demonstration on the 7th of June earlier this year against the Starmer government. This year, we also ran, I think, 4 or 5 candidates in student union elections in Cardiff, Sheffield, Lancaster. I've forgotten the other ones.
Leeds, sort of in Leeds.
And
they banned us. But
they banned us. Yeah, there you go, democracy. And had amazing results in Cardiff. 1,000 votes for open revolutionary communist candidate. Right, we have been really throwing ourselves into whatever public campaigning activity we can do to match that energy, to match that mood that exists out there in society. And in some places, what you find is the ruling class or kind of like right-wing commentators see what we're doing and they latch onto it and go crazy. And actually, in so doing, expose us to more people. So thank you very much. Shout out Sharon Osbourne, who responded to, Alice, who ran in Cardiff. And, all these kind of strange, bizarre things. It gives us more and more exposure, which is great because we are not hiding anything.
Yes.
It's related to what we were saying earlier about Trump and the White House saying, oh, the communists are hiding their real politics through this other language. Like, no, we are not hiding anything. Real communists are out here loudly declaring ourselves for what we are. And because we have the confidence that there are people out there who are looking for these ideas. And I did this tweet last week on the anniversary of the Russian Revolution, just a really harmless, tweet celebrating the fact that 108 years ago, Lenin and the Bolsheviks did the impossible, took power and held on to it. And for that reason, the ruling class have never forgiven them. And I just was advertising this incredible book that we've produced in defense of Lenin, which you can get. And it went crazy. And that tweet has like 5 million views and all of these right-wing Republicans, like just going enraged, essentially. And I think what they were enraged at was the idea that a young person in the West has grown somehow to admire Lenin and the Bolsheviks.
Yes.
And not just admire it, but proudly declare that for the world to see. Yeah. And we don't have time to go into the levels of insane replies. If you're bored and have literally nothing else to do and want to laugh, then have a look. But I wanted to mention it because we don't, put out pictures of Lenin or anything just for the shock value.
Or to be edgy.
Right? For us, communism is not just about being edgy online, which it is for some people. But we're not interested in that. What we are interested is is learning from Lenin's life, right? What I said, that they achieved what seemed impossible, which was for the workers to take power. That is what we are fighting for in Britain today in 2025.
Yes.
And so I think we need to learn a bit from Lenin.
Yes.
Explain that.
Yes, for sure. And there's going to be a talk at the Revolution Festival on 1917, how the workers took power, which I'm really looking forward to. And I've been discussing this week with the comrade who's going to give that lead off. And what's very interesting is how much we can learn, not about the Bolshevik Revolution insofar as it's going to completely map to how the revolution will play out in Britain or how revolutions are playing out across the world, but how to think like a communist, right?
Yeah.
How to respond to changing situations
Yeah.
and different twists and turns. And I remember after my first world event, buying the book "What Is to Be Done" by Lenin, and the huge impact that had on me.
Yeah.
On one particular point, he calls for the need for professional revolutionaries,
Yeah.
right? And what he meant by that was not for people to basically be on the payroll of the party. It's your approach to the work, right?
Yeah.
That being a Bolshevik, being a communist, is far more than a hobby. It's
Yeah.
not something you fit around your life, right?
Yeah.
It's about dedicating yourself completely to the building of a party that can liberate humanity.
Mhm.
And there are many things that flow from that, right? If that's your perspective, if that's what you make of your life, which I would say, which I would argue is the best thing you can do with your life,
Yeah.
there are many things that come with that. You need a professional organization.
Mhm.
You know, Lenin's gift was understanding how that organization could be built, right? And ideas without an organization, without a party, are like a knife without a blade.
Mm.
And so that had a huge impact on me. And when you see how Lenin responded to revolutionary events, even when they were small, it's like a small group in 1905, what was Lenin's response? It was to find what was progressive in that movement and to elevate it.
Mm.
There was this constant emphasis of Lenin on the youth, on recruiting young people that are unburdened by past defeats, and also on theory, on theoretical clarification. And it's funny because sometimes we're attacked by groups on the left today. They say, "Oh, you're just a band of students,
Yeah. You just read.
and you just read. You're a glorified book club, and all of this stuff."
False.
But actually, these people attack our strong side, I would
Yes.
say, rather than our weak side.
Yeah.
It's very much in the essence of Bolshevism to base yourself on that new layer that can drive the party forward,
Yes.
drive the struggle forward, and are most willing to sacrifice, have the most to gain through struggle, and to base yourself, yes, on a clear ideological understanding, a theoretical foundation. It's only from that that you can understand what the tasks are as a revolutionary. So that's a big part of my inspiration from Lenin.
100%. How anyone can say or use the term reading group as an insult is extraordinary.
Yes.
Because, as you say, it was Lenin's theoretical clarity, the attention that he paid to theory, which allowed him to understand the world around him when all of the other so-called socialists and communists failed. Like, famously, when the First World War breaks out and the Second International, which was an international communist organization, it was full of like important Marxists who had written a lot on Marxist theory that people had taken very seriously. When it was founded, Engels had been involved. I mean, this was a serious party with huge parties in Germany and so on and so forth. But when the war broke out, which was a massive historical event, the pressure that it produced in those communist parties meant that the leadership capitulated and essentially ended up supporting their own bourgeois governments in the war. Of course, they clouded it in their own kind of terms. They've got to protect their own working class. But it was a massive abandonment of internationalism and having a principled internationalist communist class response to imperialist war that was breaking out around the world. And Lenin was able to see that rot that had developed and then took the necessary decision about having to break away from the Second International. And that was only possible. He was only able to withstand the pressure of bourgeois society, which is enormous, because he had this theoretical approach, which he holds with him and he infuses into the Bolshevik Party, which takes them all the way into 1917, guides them through the February Revolution, guides them through the subsequent months where there's all of this pressure. A provisional government is erupted, or a provisional government takes power. And again, this constant ability, this was Lenin's uniqueness, the ability to withstand the pressure that comes on revolutionary parties to capitulate, to go for a reformist, to go for the kind of in-between government that can often erupt after a revolution.
Yeah, the path of least resistance.
He kept it going all the way until October, when the Bolsheviks and the workers are finally able to take power. And the reason that I think this is worth mentioning is because all around the world today, we are seeing a lot of February revolutions.
Yes.
But unfortunately, all around the world today, what we don't see are Lenin's and the Bolshevik Party, which can make sure that that revolution isn't just for nothing.
Yes.
This is our historic task. This is what we are trying to build. We want to make sure that every country and every working class has its own October.
Yes.
Which is the only way forward for genuine liberation from the capitalist system and the horrors that it is producing.
Yes.
So we want to get these ideas out to as many people as possible, and we will never apologize for our emphasis on theory. That's why we've done this podcast. Last week, we were trying to explain, and we did explain, I think, why war is intrinsic to the capitalist system and how communists should approach the question of war. This is, what we're all about.
For sure, for sure. And there's this really nice phrase by Trotsky. He said that in February there was a paradox in the revolution. What did he mean by that? He said the paradox of February is that the workers, through their heroicism, through their courage, through their struggle, have overthrown the Tsar. They've managed to achieve that. However, their class enemies have co-opted the movement and come to power.
Yeah.
And that's what the provisional government was. It was stuffed full of industrialists, of bankers, of people that were tied to the old project.
Yes.
And they required a left cover in the form of the Mensheviks and the SRs to kind of give it a progressive veneer. But these people were not going to actually come good on what had radicalized people in the first place and what the workers had struggled for. And so what was necessary was to take that revolution to its completion, to see the working class genuinely come to power. And that's what Lenin, of course, was fighting for, what the Bolsheviks were able to achieve. And you look in Sri Lanka today, or Nepal, or the events in Madagascar, actually a lot of the governments that come in, or Bangladesh is a very clear example of this. The people that come in, these liberals that pose as progressives, pose as friends of the movement, actually they wait for the movement to subside in order for the whip of counter-revolution to come in, right? And they represent all of the same interests of the people that came before, i.e., the class issues that brought people out in the first place are not being resolved. That fundamental contradiction. And that's why October, like when we talk about October changing the world and, you know, the impossible becoming possible, that is, of course, what we fight for. And we need clear revolutionary ideas for that.
Yeah.
And we've got this weekend.
This weekend, finally, we have the Revolution Festival, which is the School of Communism, which is our biggest political event of the year, where we have, 32 different talks on what we consider to be the most important theoretical questions of the day. And we use this to arm ourselves. It's also just incredible to be around. Well, it will actually be over 1,000 communists.
Yes.
I'm happy to announce. I think we're very close to reaching 1,100 tickets.
Yes.
For the Revolution Festival, which is the highest it has ever been. We've been saying it's like, RevFest is like, you know, Christmas. It's like communist Christmas or something. It is, it's because you bring everyone together. And the presents are theory. I'm going to end the analogy there. But it's going to be amazing. Also because we have our biggest ever international delegation. I should have got the list of countries that are coming, but it would have taken too long.
You'll find out if you come to the plenary session on Friday.
Exactly. So we would really encourage anyone who's following us, if you can come along. It's from this Friday, the 14th of November to the 16th for the weekend, or if you want, you can just come for a day. And I actually think my session on immigration and Cal's session on a history of Palestinian resistance, you can even just attend those specific sessions if you want for £5 for a ticket. It will be the best political event you go to this year.
For sure.
Until next year.
Yes.
Well, that's why I said this year.
Just on this note, before we wrap up, something I wanted to raise. We talked a little bit about what joining the organization meant for us.
Yeah.
Almost 10 years ago now, in both cases.
Don't say that again.
But we did a survey of new members that are playing excellent roles in London branches over the last couple of weeks. And we asked for testimonials of what made this feel like their party.
Yeah.
And there was one from East London. I won't say the
Shout
comrade's
out.
name, but I think they're in
East
your
London.
branch. But what they
Best
write,
branch.
I think, is very, very interesting, and I think gives a taste of like what it is to actually get organized. So I'm going to read it in full. Joining a group called the Revolutionary Communist Party can sound like a big deal. I was approached by a small group of people selling a newspaper in East London, print media in 2025, exclamation mark. And whilst they were friendly and personable, I was nervous and apprehensive. The negative associations with the word communism, the gargantuan task of overthrowing British capitalism, and the reading required did initially come across quite daunting. What I can say about my 8 months with the RCP is that I've learnt so much. The reading groups have been super helpful, and the branch discussions / lead-offs have taught me so much about history. Most importantly, the people here have a relentless optimism which is so infectious, despite the world and system we live under. The gargantuan task of overthrowing British capitalism is a big one, but it doesn't feel daunting when you're with the RCP.
Beautiful. That's so nice. And yeah, this is what we mean about, moving from, thoughts to action, right? That is what the RCP can offer. So we should say that we're taking a little break.
Yeah,
on
you've
the
got
podcast.
bad news to announce.
After RevFest, we'll be taking a bit of a pause for a while before we come back. But A World on Fire is not over. It's just hibernating. I don't know.
Well, yeah, we're coming to the end of season 1.
Yeah, basically.
And there might be a Christmas special, but
Yes.
we wanted to say to our supporters, thank you so much for joining us on this journey. I hope that you've enjoyed it. We're always open to feedback.
Yes. And if there's topics that you want covered or anything like this, then please, let us know what season 2 can focus on, all of this kind of stuff.
Yes, yeah.
That'd be good.
And please donate to the Revolutionary Communist Party. And if you've been inspired by the season so far, you should think about not only joining us at Revolution Festival this weekend, but becoming a member of the RCP.
Cool. Thank you so much.